Hello, and welcome to the Argyle CFO Leadership Forum Finance Evolution 2024. My name is Nick with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our panel moderator. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. For those seeking CPE credit today, you must answer at least 3 polling questions and remain on the session for its duration. Polls can be found under the Polls tab on the right-hand side of your console next to Chat. Afterwards, if you are eligible to receive credit, you will receive an email with a link to your certificates. If you have any questions on credits, please email cpe@argyleforum.com. To ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat, and we will address your questions at the end of the session. Now, without further delay, I would like to introduce our moderator, Matt Pileski, Regional Chief Financial Officer, Arthur J. Gallagher. We're super excited to have Matt and our panelists for a panel discussion titled Finance Strategies and Innovation for Growth. Welcome, Matt. Over to you.
Okay. Well, I'm both excited and honored to be here today, hosting what we think will be a very entertaining session on linking finance strategies for innovation and growth. So just to introduce myself, I'm Matt Pileski. I work for Arthur Gallagher. I've been with the company about 20 years now, started my career like a lot of us at KPMG and Big Four. Now I'm kind of running both the financial analysis and planning in our Northeast region, along with a lot of the M&A integration. And I'll let the other panelists introduce themselves. Let's start with you, Nayab, if you just want to give a little background about yourself.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Matt. Happy to be part of this group today. My name is Nayab Siddiqui. I'm CFO and Head of Strategy for a company called Resi360. We are a technology company. We are focusing on building a platform for human connection, travel, tourism. So basically focusing on human connectivity as such. Based out of Silicon Valley, California. And my background is finance, of course, over 25 years of experience working in different parts of the world, different big and small corporations, and happy to be here.
Okay. Greg, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Greg Panic. I'm the Vice President of International Business here at CTDI. CTDI, we are an engineering, repair, and logistics company that works with the telecommunications industry across the world. My responsibility is everything on the international side. I've been with the organization for 7 years now, and I'm responsible for the entire business on the international side, from end-to-end finance, operations, accounting, and treasury. So happy to be with everyone.
Okay. And last, Leah, would you like to recommend yourself?
Yes. Yes, my name is Leah. So I'm the Group VP Finance of Newton Inc. Newton is a NASDAQ, registered. So the main business is, electronic mobile. I started my career just like Matt. I started my career with KPMG and went through all this type of, different parts of financial operation and, accounting, budgeting, forecasting, strategic, planning and, M&A. So right now, I just, last year, I moved from United States to Dubai. So actually, I'm doing this event from Dubai right now. Is early in the evening, but I'm very happy to be with the group and to join this exciting, event.
Okay. We'll start with our first question then to everybody. What financial metrics and insights, we do a lot to measure things. What's most effective when you're trying to align those metrics and insights you have with the corporate strategies, organizational goals, Nayab, do you want to start with your experience on this one?
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. Folks, Matt, in fact, it's an overarching question, but it is very deep inside as well, because normally if we look at finance function, we normally look at some of the key metrics which are actually culminating into the purpose of an organization, which is profit making or perhaps profit maximization. So we always talk about revenues, we always talk about EBITDA, we talk about gross profit margins, all those ratios that we learned throughout our life, right? So that is, of course, I mean, that is very, very important. But I would point towards understanding the business more and trying to understand what are the KPIs which are meaningful for the business as such. And when I talk about KPIs meaningful for business, it could be pay per click. It could be metrics which are driving those revenues, matrices which are increasing the contribution margin, revenue matrices which are basically basis of that business. So I think every company, every business is different in its own right, and rather than just looking at those few matrices that we as finance folks look at, like revenue, EBITDA, etc., we should definitely drill down a little bit more and try to understand the matrices which are meaningful for the business. Ultimately, they'll definitely culminate into the matrices that we or ratios that we look at. One important aspect is the scenario analysis and forecasting that we must focus on, because business is ever changing. And if you just focus on one or two matrices, that won't serve the purpose for business. So in order to align our goals with the business or with the executives, we have to look at what are the different scenarios that are playing part in culminating into those revenue matrices or profitability matrices. So build those scenarios, look at how those are like impacting each and every matrix. So that's how you'll be able to work much more closely with the business, and of course looking at the right matrices which mean more than the standard or regular matrices that we always look at.
I like that. So in summary, it's just kind of understanding the metrics and what they mean to the business and how they're using them. Greg, do you want to add further?
Yeah, I mean, from my side, you really look at it from, if you're looking from a alignment from corporate goals. So my role is to not only grow the business, right? Finance should be there to try to drive the business forward and help make organizational decisions. I think the most telling for me on a P&L side is gross margin percentage, contribution percentage, because it's really determining what's the health of your revenue, right? What's the health of your revenue? And each of your departments have a target that you're shooting for, whether you're making widgets or you're repairing devices or you're selling security. You have a gross margin percentage. So even if my revenue goes up or down, it's how is my contribution margin for the company? So from a financial person is understanding your mix of business and how it impacts margin, and then what levers in your ops pool to be able to stay aligned. On the balance sheet, I think you keep it simple, because the reality is the health of a business. If you have a healthy business, you have a healthy balance sheet. I think of a current ratio of all my current assets and liabilities, and what does that look like? And making sure that all of my items that can impact my cash flow and my balance sheet are in line, keeping everything current and available, allows the finance partner to make sure the business is in a place to make decisions, especially if it's for growth. Or if it's a discontinued op, do we have the ability to do so? So those have been two items that I would focus on to stay aligned from an organizational perspective.
I like that too. I mean, looking at knowing your mix and your ratios and your levers and what it all means, that's all extremely insightful to the business. Leah?
Yes, I have experience. I have to deal with more like the corporate side on the top level. Also, explain the business operation to the investment communities. So normally, what in terms of focus on the growth, normally what the investment community are looking at is kind of top and the bottom. Top is revenue growth rate, and the bottom is earnings per share. So those are two metrics normally tell the story about the company's growth. and the company's cost management and the health of a company's operation. So normally we focus on these two areas, compare one area, one period to another period, and also drill down to the different region, different product line, and to compare to like a revenue growth rate to identify what is the best investment area to generate the good revenue and for the to bring the the cash flow to bring the revenue into the organization. And the EPS normally it comes down to the very end of the financial statement bottom line, and to compare EPS from one period to another period is able to tell the story. If the operation effectiveness and efficiency, and start from there, and so we can drill down to how to make the growth improvements. In terms of also for the future, further to what is the best investment area in terms of product line and regions, stuff like that.
Okay. Yes, and I'll add from my perspective, I always like to start the meetings with the business with them talking about the strategy and what they're trying to accomplish. They seem to like to start directly with the numbers, but I think if you start with them, this gets into the empathy, talking about what they're trying to accomplish. Then we can examine the numbers and say, like, are they, instead of just looking at monthly variances or monthly, then it's like, okay, how do the key metrics, are they even measuring what we want to be measuring? So I think having them start with strategy and then go into numbers, that's been my biggest success story there. Move on to question number 2, which is, what does successful collaboration between finance and other departments look like? Do you have any real world examples you can share? Leah, you want to go first on this one?
Yes. For example, I think in terms of cross-functional, sharing the experience, I have the I have the appreciation to work with different department, and but I think number one point in order to gain the cooperation is appreciate each other's the focus point, to make sure different department have a mutual understanding. So for example, in order to measure the marketing dollar allocation, what is the right marketing program to allocate the appropriate amount of capital. So basically, the marketing, the people, they not necessarily know, the return on the, what is the return on the investment means, how to measure them, and how to track. They more focus on, the most popular projects and most popular product, but not necessarily, for example, the internet optimization. The dollar amount invested into the internet optimization, we have to take a look at the certain period return and the lead, whether those leads are effective or no. Kind of finance people will it's very good to cross-functional, build up the mutual understanding, introduce the concept, how we measure, the target to, a different department. And then, after we have the mutual understanding, looking for the strategic goal, and make sure we align at the same strategic goal, and develop the, strategy and KPI together. And that would be, the normally, return on the very positive result for the corporate strategy.
Yeah, I like that. That's basically saying make sure we know each department's incentives and make sure we're aligning them and interpreting the metrics the right way. Greg, you want to add on to this one?
Yeah, sure. So I think collaboration is probably the most important thing a finance group can do with the business, right? A lot of times finance comes in with a reputation like an IT security group, where they just come in with just the bad news and or they just want to talk data versus trying to solve problems. So all of our finance folks, I really encourage them first and foremost to understand the business and ask the right questions, really understand, like Leah said, understanding their metric, where they're being sensitive, but going a little bit differently of what's their real pain points and how do you understand the business so that you're providing data to discussions that make sense. The second piece for me from a financial perspective is how do you look around corners, right? How do you start to anticipate what the business is coming and add value with financial data and insights, and not just kind of report what happened in the past or talk about where you think the projection is going to go in the future. It's the storytelling behind that. A bit about that, we use kind of be a newsmaker versus a news reporter, right? So how do you add value to the conversations? And by adding the value, you create communication and dialogue and you start to create a trust with your business unit and or your internal teams. The focus always has to be providing meaningful information, right? If you're building a report that you don't believe is meaningful or value add, that's not going to enhance communication. That's going to hurt the communication between finance and the operations. I think finally, too, one topic that I see a lot, and when I used to work on in finance and in the city, avoid jargon, right? Finance folks at times like to use charts and make up names and well, I learned this in B school and this is what I do. That does not enhance communication. So I think about it. So my mom, as an example, was a chief nursing officer for a large hospital network. And I'd get calls every once in a while going, what's this? Like, what finance is telling me this? Finance is telling me that. I don't understand. They're trying to talk around the clinical staff. So they're not engaging the clinical leadership to help solve problems. They're trying to talk around them or talk past them. She would leave the room, pick up the phone and call me. I'd walk her through what was going on, and she'd go back in armed to be able to have a conversation. That's not the engagement you want from a communication perspective. It's how do you engage the partners, understanding that a lot of your partners aren't financial people. So how do I make the financial information useful? But that comes with understanding the business and understanding the ask or the start point. So that's where I would think about communication, where finance teams need to add value to the business.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, the collaboration and speaking their language as opposed to ours and seeing the world from their point of view, that's huge in a partner. Nab?
Yeah, so basically, whenever I talk about organizations, whenever I talk about collaboration, I always give an analogy of the human body. So an organization is just like a human body. If all of its limbs are not in sync, they don't know where they are going, they are not collaborating, they are not talking to each other, the organization is going to fail. It's the same situation with an organization as well. And we as finance, basically we are sitting as someone who's basically passing on all the information to the whole body, right? So if we are not transmitting the right information to the right people in the right way that they are understanding, we're definitely setting the organization for a failure. So coming down to from this analogy to real world finance function, of course, I mean, collaboration is very, very important. And the key word over here is goal congruence. If we don't focus on goal congruence, of course, we are not, communicating well. We are not collaborating well. To Greg's point, if you're not talking their language, if you're not storytelling, if you're not telling that how they are contributing to the organization, then everyone is working in their silos, because different organizations have got different KPIs, different focus different achievements or different KPIs. Like, for instance, if you're talking about marketing function, they may not be looking at whatever they contribute in dollar terms. They might be looking at it from the outreach that they are creating, how many people they are interacting with, how many boards or hoardings they are putting up around in the country, but how it is transforming or translating into real numbers or revenues or bottom line. Most of the time, for instance, if they are not aware, this is our job to talk to them in their language and tell them that how their contributions is impacting the bottom line. So it all comes down to talking in their own language, not in financial jargons. Avoid those big spreadsheets that nobody would understand. So talk to them in whatever they understand. and try to build that collaboration like a human body, where all the functions are working together, not in silos. And I think, I mean, as I said earlier, finance is the core function which is sitting in between, like a pumping organization, pumping information to the whole body. And one more very important collaboration example could be your IT function, your data analysis function. So in the current scenario, in current world, data is everything. If you're not getting the data from all those organizations, which ultimately is going to be utilized for finance and then ultimately for decision making, then we are still working. We are working in silo. We are not collaborating and getting the right information. So information is key. If you don't talk to all the organizations, departments in the organization, you'll not get their data. You'll not be able to refine that and bring it to the executives for decision making. So collaboration, goal congruence.
Love it. Yeah, and I'll just add, I think here, part of the success with other departments is showing them that you value the relationship with them. And, like I have a strong partnership with HR, I have a strong partnership with ops, like as some of those departments have changed people, putting the time in up front to get alignment. And then I also think in kind of finance is really the integrator role, because we have all the data where we're like, look, if people stuff change, we see it in our P&L, right? If ops is doing something, we see the margin improvement. So it's up to us to kind of see the trends and then sit down with people where we built those relationships and say, hey, what changed? Why did this trend change? So really involved a lot as an integrator where I'm at. We'll move on to kind of, the next question is very much a continuation of the previous question. So do you have any insights on effectively communicating with other departments or across the organization? Greg, I'll let you take this one first.
Sure. I think communication is something that a lot of finance teams struggle with, right? It's not something that is, in many cases, coached when folks are younger in their career. People are tacticians and subject matter experts, and as they matriculate through the ranks and have to be in these conversations, I think the opportunity for each of the people on the call is to think about your team and think about how do you put some of your finance folks in a room and have them interact so that they start to learn those skills earlier in the career. So I think that's key. When you're talking broadly about the process, I think the focus needs to be about active listening. That definitely sounds like a buzzword, and it's utilized probably more frequently than it needs to be. But are you actively listening in the conversation as to what the tone and the concern and the problem that's trying to be solved is? Are you really listening to your customer, whether it's an internal customer or an external customer? Do you understand what they're trying to achieve, and do you have financial data to do that? Once you really listen and you understand, then you can start to solve, right? Don't jump to conclusions, right? Don't try to solve the problem straight away. Understand the topic and go on. The other thing I think finance folks, when you talk about key strategies, and I think that's a pretty broad term, is be mindful of your tone, your word choice, right? Sometimes if you come in with an edge, that it sets the tone of the conversation where they're like, okay, finance is just going to shoot this down. You may be shooting it down for the right reasons because it's the right thing for the business, but if your tone is not good, you're setting the example. So really being clear with your communications. You touched on in the last point. You want to speak the language of your customer, whether it's internal or not. If you're talking to HR, you can't go into heavy detail. I think I've said about spreadsheets that only the finance team understand. Really speak to data that makes sense to them, and finally be clear and to the point. Don't your additions to the conversation should be clear and succinct, and that you could support with data. So coming into those conversations prepared and really understanding and being clear and succinct, then the discussion becomes, how am I solving a problem, or how are we pushing forward an agenda versus understanding the data. Be clear and concise and say, here's the data that all of you have in your email or all of you have in front of you. This is why we're doing this. This is why we think we should do this, or this is the direction we should take. Allows for conversation versus discussion of data.
Yeah, I think those are all great, especially I think as we talk about data, let's make sure our own data is right and we've scrubbed it before we just push out the numbers and they tell us our data's wrong. I think getting alignment that we agree we're looking at the right data, or we're looking at it the right way. Very important stuff there. Nayab, would you like to add?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about communication, we normally focus on one-way communication, and that's what finance folks do. We all do. We just like build reports, go to the executive meetings, and start, passing on the information. So most of the time, it's one-way communication. I think the change has to be two-way communication, where we are, to Greg's point, we are listening to others first, and then providing meaningful information. So if you open both the incoming and outgoing channels of communication, that will solve a lot of problems between different functions and within the organization. And again, I mean, it has to be clear, concise messaging. And again, the key thing is, look at the bigger picture. Look at what people are trying to achieve from the information that we are providing to them. If that purpose is not being solved or served, our information, no matter whatever detailed work we have done, no matter how many pages of presentation we are making, it's meaningless. So when we communicate, it has to be concise. It has to be understandable, and it has to be meaningful for our listeners or for the readers. Storytelling is a great thing. I think, I mean, if we, rather than looking at numbers, if we convert them into real life stories which our listeners should understand, I think that will be a great way of communicating and making them understand how business is doing, because most of the time our listeners are understanding the business and may not be able to translate them into numbers. So we have to do that job and work for them to make them understand. And again, I mean, it has to be constant communication, not sporadic but constant. A lot of times we only meet our partners once a quarter or once a month, once the reports are ready. It has to be day in, day out. Those small chats, water cooler chats, are very important, where we are touching base with each other, getting that communication going, and building that rapport where people start listening to the finance function. That is very important in terms of communicating.
Okay. Leah?
Yeah. So for my experience, so I just like Greg and Nayab already said, finance people tends to have like kind of a 1 week communication, bring the number in, and like a lot of times the other people really do not understand this chart and number. So I always tell myself and tell my team. What is the goal for the communication to talk to the other, departments in the organization? We want to, understand, to be understood, and then, find the synergy to reach the common goal, to create something bigger and better. So I think, like to reach these goals, normally I'm like talk to before I go to talk to any department, I kind of do my homework and tailor my conversation, the communication way to the audience. What I ask my question, what I want to find out, what message I want to bring, come over to the across the board. What a message after what type of styles they are looking for. For example, you go to the board meeting, you just want to be short and sweet. Everybody knows on the very top level, but you go to talk to the technical person like IT, you want to kind of figure out the way they can understand you. What my problem is, when I go to IT people, normally I ask them to solve my operational problem, whether either way it's automate function for me, or resolve some like day-to-day system issues, and prevent me from getting process quicker and better. So do some homework. So be able to use the quickest way and the most easy to understand way to explain the problem, and to have a conversation, and to let them to also help them to convey their message to the finance team. So this is normally it's going to my experience is take time to tailor the way to conduct method of effective communication. Also, at the same time, we have to, as leaders, we have to find a way to coach our team to be able to figure out a way how to tailor the effective communication way when we talk to the other departments in an organization.
Okay, that's great insight, Leah. I'm seeing we're getting a lot of really good questions from the audience, and I think one we got coming in here is from Maria. If we can give insight on a focus with growth through innovation from finance or CFO views. And I think this is really, it's great because innovation, like we look at like R&D, how are we looking at that? Is it paying off? That's always kind of tough to link the two together. So what are your guys' insights on innovation from finance's point of view? Greg, why don't I start with you?
Well, I think from an innovation perspective is how do I get my key players out of builds and more into insights, right? So where can I use the innovation on our data process? I think the other piece, Matt, you mentioned earlier, we were touching on an earlier topic regarding data cleanliness. You can go into the future of AI and do all these, automated processes, but if your data is garbage, then you're just putting out garbage in a faster manner, right? So making sure your data is clean, but from a finance perspective, I want my key players less building, more analysis and insights and understanding the business and trying to get more engaged with the ops. It's not just building. It's not just building reports, right? It's like, how do I get engaged to understand what they're doing and start to put data out that's enhancing their decision points and enhancing their active management of the business. And that only happens by making the process more efficient and having them operate more efficiently. So that to me is the big, from an innovation, from a finance perspective, is getting the right people to spend less time building and more time adding value.
Leah, your thoughts on innovation?
A lot of, nowadays we have been dealing with, constantly, a changing business environment and the landscape and also technologies. So I think, understand the landscape a business, the organization is playing and understand the risk. And to be able to, use the most, advanced technology to come up with the solution to fit the own business is very important. For example, AI is, the most, everybody is talking about to strategize and how to utilize it. But I think, also keep in mind, when we use those data to, analyze our business and analyze market, the way how, incorporate into our day-to-day operation. Also, we need to understand what is the best product that fit for our own operation and in the different stage of the, growth. So this is, to me, is for a CFO, this is always something, keeping our mind and also the understand, those technology, the upside and downside, to eliminate the risk. This is another big part as well.
Nap, anyone thoughts on innovation?
Yeah, absolutely, Matt. So in fact, innovation is basically it has to be aligned with the business ethos, business DNA, right? So as finance alone, just imagine a situation where the organization has got processes which are redundant, which is following orthodox processes, but finance wants to do differently, and vice versa. So basically what I'm trying to say is it has to be an organizational innovation, an organizational effort. But to Maria's question, I think finance can definitely play a pivotal role in that, because the way technologies are evolving, the way regulations are evolving around those. So we are being subject matter experts on those areas, be it compliance, regulations. I think we sit in the core of all those innovations and all those changes. So I think if we can connect with the business, and while they are adapting or adopting new innovative techniques, we should work alongside with them so that they are always compliant, they follow agility, and we are working with them as partners. So I mean that's how CFOs or finance can play that part in innovation. And a lot of times we all talk about different technologies coming in. I always, or different tools coming in. I always look at technology as being innovative, not the tools, because tools are just the means, not the end. So that's something which I always cautious, that don't go with tools, go for the technology. Say, I mean, how things are evolving, how the businesses are adopting those technologies, and how they are going to impact the business, and then finance would definitely, be part of that whole change.
Okay. Yeah, and I want to add, I really love this question because I feel like as finance, we're always told we'll hit the EBITDA number. And then it's like, oh, we missed the revenue numbers. How do we save costs to hit the bottom line number? But the reality is there's always a trade-off between innovation and creativity versus profitability. And you want to make sure, like, that's why we always try to start our conversations with what are we trying to accomplish? Where, and we almost look at it from a statement of cash flows, right? How many investing activities are we doing versus operating activities versus financing activities? What's our mix? Because if we don't get enough investment dollars, we may hit today's numbers, but we may be choking the future. So just kind of like watching that mix and making sure you have that understanding, and you're not just like, well, it's my job to make sure you hit the bottom line, even if we're failing to make investments. We're getting some really good questions in here from the audience. I like Scott's question, which is really, how do you adjust economic plans if you're preparing for a downturn? And, like, how do we deliver bad news if that's, that does seem to be part of the job, is giving the bad news or preparing us for the hurricane that's coming. Greg, you want to start?
Yeah, so bad news is part of the business, right? It's the worst part of our jobs, is that I'd love to be going upstairs and talking to my CEO on a daily basis and saying, hey, everything's sunshine and rainbows and unicorns, but that's not how it works, right? So job of finance is to provide accurate and timely information. So if you do have bad news, making sure it's accurately calculated with all the related support so that you can talk to it and how you got there. And that it's timely, right? Because if I deliver something a week late, now I'm a week behind on a decision point that I could have helped the business be able to attack it. So accuracy and timeliness is hyper critical when you're delivering bad news. It's really delivering any news, right? But especially when you're delivering bad news. And then on the flip side of that, it's really then, here's the bad news. Here's what's happening. Customers going down in volumes. The market's shifting. There's a hurricane. But then it should be, what's the insights of options of what we can do to mitigate, right? Don't be just again, back to my earlier comment about a news provider, a news reporter. You want to be a newsmaker. So how do you put potential solves on the table that forces conversation and supported by data? Right? How do you enhance the conversation and not just go, here's the bad news, this is what's happening, yep, I'm on time, and yes, it's accurate, but best of luck to everybody, right? It's how do you be involved and show that you're understanding your business, understanding the customer needs, and offering solutions to that.
No, I agree 100%. There's definitely an art to giving the bad news. Leah, you want to add to that?
Giving bad news basically is kind of for a finance person, especially people come out of the auditing area, always become to be our second nature. Always thinking, oh, what is bad? How can prevent it? So I think deliver bad news is, is an art, but for me, is as a thinking about managing business. Number one, to prevent deliver bad news. So should have a risk management system in the place, and always have the system set up to diagnose what can go wrong. When the bad news comes, when we have to deliver it. A lot of times, when I was in the investor relation, role, when we need to deliver the bad news, we have to be accurate, have to be, honest, to honor the bad news to everyone. And when we deliver bad news, I think the focus is not just to deliver it. It's just to think about how to remediate the bad news, how to, the method, what is going to lead us to get out of the bad news, bad circle and the trap, and then become to be, figure out a way to, become to be good news again. So I think this is some, my experience in the past. But always be prepared for the worst, and for finance and leadership, and we always prepare for the worst and do the best we can.
Yeah, I agree. I always try to look at the silver lining when you're giving bad news, and maybe start with praise, make them feel good like you're on their side before you give the bad news. And then I like what Greg was saying with the mitigating factors. What do we do about this? How do we respond? Never let a crisis go to waste. How do we use this to make us better? Nab, you want to add anything?
Oh yeah, I like this phrase always. Never let go. Never let any crisis go for waste. So I think that's the key word. On top of that, basically, what kind of role as finance function we are playing? Is it a proactive role or is it a reactive role? If it is reactive, we become an informant. We are just like passing on the information, the bad news. But if we are acting in a proactive role, which means we must have talked about some different scenarios, reflecting back to our earlier conversation about scenario analysis, which means in our risk mitigation function, we must have talked about those. So I think if that is a reflection of our earlier risk assessment, I think that will become a better topic to talk about, and how we are going to how we've already put in place some actions to mitigate those. And secondly, when we are passing on any bad information, I think the key is that we should talk about the triggers. We should understand those triggers first, and then pass on the information about those triggers, that what actually was the trigger for this particular bad news, and how we are going to address this going forward. So how we're going to plug the gaps today, and how we are going to mitigate those going forward. So if we pass on this information, both as bad news and the solutions, then we'll be acting in a proactive manner.
Okay, we're down to the last 7 minutes, so I'll combine a couple of the questions here that are coming in. There's one about, we have an immature FP&A department. How do we really kind of build it up if our processes need improvement? And second is really kind of along the same lines of like, look, we're supposed to think collaboratively across, but if the other departments think, well, the finance is your responsibility, and they kind of silo us, how do we break that down? So it's really, how do we build the respect when it's like maybe we're a little premature, or maybe people don't want to hear from us? You want to start, Greg?
Well, I think both questions are really around your talent management. If you have I think you used an immature kind of a light FP&A group, bringing in the right people to do that. You may have the right talent, but they may not have the right level to deliver insight. So filling in the gaps where you have on the talent side of people that can instantly make an impact and start to create the connections within the business, while you allow your other players to develop their skill sets to be able to add that same value. So I think talent assessment's key. If you have departures or transitions, maybe that's a quick hire, but really you should be doing that. I look at my talent every year and really assess for my internal purpose of, is their toolkit getting better, getting stronger? Are they able to add more value than this time of the year versus this time last year? And if not, I start asking, what do I need to do differently? So that constant evaluation of talent, but also putting the right people in the right roles. And I think if you don't have the ability to do that quickly, and you talk about the pushback, Matt, of that they don't want people to see at the table, you've got to be able to leverage what you can with the resources you have, and really, for lack of a better term, kill them with work, right? Kill them with effort, to be able to say, yep, we may not have the most senior person that can help, but this person's going to outwork everybody, and listen, hey guys, this is going to be a busy time, and maybe you have cross-functional leadership that comes in and helps some other part of finance to be able to support during the time. But I think the senior leadership, like Matt, in your role, for example, my role, it's like, okay, how do I step in? Maybe my FP&A team's weak, but I can go in and step in and be that liaison for some of these conversations in the short term, to be able to, or identify, like I've got Nayab and I've got Leah. Okay, I'm going to pull for these 4 initiatives. We're going to break them up, and this is what we're going to do to lead. So, and that also drives the leading by example, and you're going to learn on the job. So I think that's another way to look at it. But talent at a foundational level, talent is by far the most important thing we can do. Talent, and when I say talent, it's not just recruitment of a Nayab or a Leah or a Matt. It's how do I retain and develop that talent to be able to continue to get them to add value to the organization.
Yeah, no, I love that, because I think a lot of my time is spent too, like recognizing here's the strengths and weaknesses of the people on my team, and how do I set them up, and how do I, leverage their strengths and maybe cover a little bit for their weaknesses, and actually have them do that for each other. If I have one person who's very strong in M&A, another person who's very strong on kind of like comp and incentives, have those 2 people partner, let them take different leads. But, Leah, I'll let you but this is, I think, a great question of how do we market ourselves and how do we position ourselves for value add?
So I think understand, our strengths and, what is the business opportunity, what we, have, as an organization, what, we, already the capacity and, capability is, we already have what is missing to meet that, a great opportunity. So that determines a lot regarding to, how do we position ourselves. Because, as an organization, when you think about, your strategy, your goal, most the first thing you're going to think is, what do I have, what I don't have, what position, action items we need to take in order to achieve that. So we set up the target, and we're looking at where we are here now, and then we say, in the, realistically, what are we strategic intent and actions we are going to do, and to put this, gap together, to make this gap and to go to the target to meet the organization goal. So I think, it's all determined to, how well we are able to understand ourselves and, understand our strengths and weakness, and to be able to make the improvements and to get there.
Okay. We're down to about a minute left in the session. Nayab, do you want to give any kind of closing remarks?
Yeah, absolutely. So on this question, I think I would go with a 2-pronged strategy, because I think if you're talking about a weak or a immature FP&A organization, the key has to be, or the focus has to be, build this organization. And to do that, that is the long-term strategy. So to build that organization, we must create an appreciation that how well-oiled well-groomed FP&A function would contribute to the organization. So once we have that appreciation, which means we are getting the bucks, putting the bucks in the right place, and getting that budget to hire the right people. So that's long-term strategy. And in terms of the short-term strategy, I think Greg was right. I think we have to step in much more frequently as leaders, and don't let any slippages from an immature team, because once that image is being tarnished because of any small hiccups or loopholes, we'll not be able to recover that very quickly. So I think, we have to definitely be on top of our own job. We have to step in as much as possible, and try to build that team over a period of time so that they start contributing.
Okay. Any closing remarks from you, Greg or Leah?
Leah, go ahead.
So I think today we covered a lot of strategy, finance strategy in terms of how to make help the organization for growth. All are very, very valuable, and it's very a lot of I appreciate those questions and panelists' comments and notes. Very inspirational, and I'm going to this a lot of takeaway from this meeting. Thank you.
Okay. I think that about concludes our session for today. I think we're all available to reach out for us. If you look for us on LinkedIn or anything, we'd be happy to answer any questions. And thanks for joining today.
Great. And thank you all for such an insightful panel discussion. And I want to thank everyone else for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. As a reminder, please be sure to check out the prizes and raffle rules section to see how you can earn points for the chance to win one of several prizes. Our next session will begin at 2:05 p.m. Eastern Time, which will be a keynote presentation titled Budgeting and Rebuilding Revenue Streams. Please click on the join button that will appear on your screen to be redirected to the next session, and we look forward to seeing you there.